Fabric is made from thousands of braided threads. This mill has 700 bobbins of polyester. Each bobbin contains 250,000 meters of thread. We begin by separating the threads. This warp unit takes the 700 strands and assembles them. Then this comb separates them. Other strands are added, and in total, there will be 7,000 of them well aligned. One fabric is composed of threads braided at 90 degrees. The warp threads are assembled lengthwise, while the weft threads are joined transversely. To prevent the threads from tearing, they pass through a bin of glue. These rollers eliminate the surplus. The glue will be removed with water before dyeing the threads. The glued together threads exit this machine. These large green cylinders are heated and dry the glue on the threads. Knitting will soon begin. The 700 strands are newly separated on this loom roller. Each thread must pass through a blade to produce a specific design. This machine takes the 7,000 strands of thread one by one, and they pass through the blade. It's a highly precise operation. The threads pass through a blade, and the weaving finally begins. On this Jacquard-type loom roller, the warp thread is inserted by a jet of air. The weaving machine assembles two loom rollers made of 7,000 strands. The fabric reaches a width of 3.65 meters. The dark threads are inserted into the weave. They insert 600 weft strands per minute. The blades remove the weft strands to insert the warp ones between the two. A comb pushes the weft. The plate of the breakage chain stops the machine should a thread break. This bobbin contains 250,000 meters of thread. That's 250 kilometers. The weft thread is in the insertion nozzle. When a weft is inserted, an air jet nudges it in. The loom roller operates at full tilt. It makes 600 thread intersections a minute. Weaving is now over. We move on to the following steps: washing and dyeing. Washing is done in a soapy solution at 80 degrees in a continuous manner at a speed of 60 meters of fabric a minute. The fabric is rinsed in clear water of about 30 degrees. Now it's on to dyeing. This is done with jets. Up to 12,000 meters of fabric are placed in clean water into which colorants have been added. The solution is heated and the fabric soaks here for about 6 hours. Then it will be rinsed in lukewarm water. The fabric is placed in a bin. This machine is called an opener. It unfolds and stretches the material before rolling it up on an immense roller. And now the roll is almost full. We now move to thermosetting in a high-temperature oven which dries the fabric. The temperature is 200 degrees centigrade at the oven's entrance. The fabric circulates here for 45 seconds. This finished roll weighs 1,500 kilos. The bobbin that we saw at the beginning has produced 25 kilometers of fabric.
Lapel pins let you proudly show off where you've been or where you stand. From an event you've attended or your political beliefs to your professional affiliation or your favorite sports team. Lapel pins cost pennies to produce, but some are collector's items worth thousands of dollars. They may be tiny, but they're out there in huge numbers. This one company turns out about 5 million lapel pins a year. It all starts with a sketch of the pin design, and from that, the master, a negative made of magnesium, a type of metal. They'll make copies of this master to create a production mold. But first, using what's called a coping saw, they cut out the front and back pieces of the master. Using a dispenser about the size of a sewing needle, they glue the pieces together with epoxy. It takes 5 minutes to dry. Then they cast enough copies of the master to fill up a rubber disc. After tracing the outlines, a worker uses a surgical knife to meticulously carve out the cavities. He softens the rubber with paint thinner to enable precision cuts. Then he places a copy of the master in each cavity. Another disc goes on top. Then it's into a machine called a vulcanizer for 1 hour. This machine uses heat and pressure to cure the rubber, making it as hard as a car tire. It also melds the rubber around each master copy, embedding the detail. This will be the production mold for producing this pin design. Now, using a surgical knife again for precision, they carve out sprues, channels that during the casting process will direct the flow of molten metal to the cavities. They also make smaller, curved channels called runners to filter out any air or dirt particles. It's crucial to position the sprues and runners correctly because this mold produces an entire line of a particular pin. Mess up and they'd have to remake the mold from scratch. Next, they insert a centimeter-long brass tack called a post into each cavity. It'll later fasten to a clasp, attaching the pin to clothing. The post goes in now rather than later so that it will fuse to the back of the lapel pin during casting. Now to close the mold, they align the buttons on one half with the depressions in the other half. The mold then goes into what's called a spin casting machine. Using a cast iron ladle that can withstand the fiery temperature, they pour in molten metal, either pewter, zinc, or a tin alloy. As the machine spins, centrifugal force propels the metal into every nook and cranny of the cavities. After a minute of spinning, 400 rotations, the mold comes out. The metal takes about 5 minutes to cool and harden. The factory remelts the excess metal for the next batch. Next, a brass clasp called a clutch goes onto the post. Now the lapel pins go for an hour-long wash in soap and water and abrasive stones. The stones smooth out any rough edges. The pins go into the electroplating tank for a surface coating of metal. How many coats and the types of metal vary with the design. An electric current draws the metal particles onto the pins, plating them thoroughly. These pins first get copper plating, then nickel plating, then gold plating. Now it's time to paint the lapel pins. Workers follow a numerical guide like a paint-by-numbers kit. They paint each pin individually using minute quantities of epoxy paint. They control the paint syringe with a foot pedal. Once the paint dries, a machine called a pad printer gathers up ink and stamps on the tiny details, the ones too small to paint by hand. Pierce the post through the fabric, secure it with the clutch, and this lapel pin is now ready to wear.